hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin. Rain pelted the cemetery grounds, droplets bouncing off the black umbrella Amir Kessler held with a tight grip. His knuckles had turned white, but he barely noticed. The minister's words faded into the background as Amir stared at the polished mahogany coffin suspended above the rectangular void in the earth. Nathan Kessler. Father. Stranger. Dead at 65. Amir hadn't spoken to him in 4 years. Their last conversation had been a terse exchange of accusations about missed opportunities and disappointments. Now, watching the coffin being lowered, Amir felt something hollow carve itself deeper into his chest. The small gathering of mourners, mostly his father's poker buddies and a few neighbors, began to disperse. Several nodded at Amir as they passed, muttering condolences he barely registered. He remained rooted in place while cemetery workers began shoveling wet soil onto the coffin. Mr. Kessler. A funeral director approached, clutching a folder against his chest to shield it from the rain. There are some papers that need your signature. Amir nodded. I'll be right there. When the man retreated, Amir took 3 measured steps toward the grave. He pulled a small stone from his pocket, smooth and flat, one he'd picked up from his father's driveway. He placed it on a mound of fresh dirt, and words came. Not "I'm sorry," or "I miss you," or even "goodbye." Just silence. His phone vibrated in his pocket. A reminder. He had 3 days of bereavement leave approved by Trail Forge's HR department. 3 days to process 33 years of complicated history. He pocketed the phone without checking the message and walked away. Back at his downtown apartment, Amir shed his soaked suit and stood under a scalding shower. Steam fogged the glass, obscuring his reflection. He preferred it that way. The water couldn't wash away the strange emptiness he felt, but at least it masked the tears that had refused to come at the cemetery. He wrapped himself in a robe and sat at his desk, opening his laptop automatically. Work had always been his refuge. As Trail Forge supply chain operations lead, he'd transformed their logistics systems from regional to global. He'd built optimization algorithms that had saved the company millions. He'd given them everything: weekends, holidays, relationships that withered from neglect. A notification popped up on a screen. Reed Halperin requesting updates on the Singapore shipping corridor rollout. Reed, with his MBA from Wharton and his country club memberships, who'd been promoted above Amir despite having half his technical knowledge. Amir closed the laptop. For once, work could wait. He had 3 days of sanctioned grief. For the next 72 hours, Amir moved through his father's house like a ghost. He sorted through papers, made calls to utilities, and boxed up clothes for donation. Each item he touched raised questions he'd never asked. Who gave his father this fishing trophy? When had he taken up watercolor painting? Why were there photos of Amir's college graduation prominently displayed when he couldn't remember his father attending? On the 3rd night, he found a journal tucked in a nightstand drawer. He opened it to the last entry, dated just 2 weeks before. Tried calling Amir again. Still won't pick up. Can't blame him. Hope someday he'll understand. I did my best. Not enough, but my best. Amir closed the journal and placed it back in the drawer. Some doors were better left shut. The morning air felt crisp against Amir's face as he approached Trail Forge's gleaming headquarters. The building, all glass and angles, reflected the surrounding trees, a corporate attempt at environmental harmony that always struck him as performative. Still, it was familiar. It was structure. After 3 days of confronting his past, he welcomed the predictability of work that he swiped his keycard at the main entrance. Red light. Access denied. He tried again. Same result. Excuse me. The security guard approached, clipboard in hand. Are you Amir Kessler? Yes, I am. There seems to be an issue with someone from HR will be down shortly. If you could wait in the lobby. Amir stepped back, confusion settling over him. He checked his phone. No messages from IT about system maintenance. No emails explaining a security update. 10 minutes later, Melissa from HR appeared, her expression tight and professional. Amir, if you'll follow me. What's going on? He asked as they rode the elevator in silence. Reed will explain everything. But Reed wasn't there when they reached Amir's floor. Instead, Melissa guided him to his desk, where a cardboard box sat waiting. You have 30 minutes to collect your personal belongings, she said, not meeting his eyes. Company policy requires that I remain present during this process. Amir felt his pulse in his throat. I don't understand. Is this some kind of mistake? Check your email. Her voice was flat that he logged into his computer and found a message from Reed Halperin. Amir, effective immediately, your employment with Trailforge has been terminated. Your extended absence during a critical deployment phase has demonstrated that you're not aligned with our company values. We need people who prioritize work and understand the competitive demands of our industry. Or will process your final paycheck and explain your options regarding benefits. Reed Halperin, Vice President. Operations. Amir read it twice, then looked up at Melissa. This is about my bereavement leave? The 3 days HR approved after my father died. She shifted uncomfortably. I can only say that the decision came from upper management. I want to speak with Reed. He's in meetings all day. Off-site. Of course he was. Amir felt heat rising to his face but forced it down. He wouldn't give them the satisfaction of an outburst. Instead, he methodically unplugged his personal items, a small plant, a spare phone charger, a framed engineering degree, and placed them in the box. Colleagues watched from the corners of their eyes, pretending to work while stealing glances at his quiet disgrace. For years of 60-hour weeks, canceled vacations, and middle-of-the-night problem-solving, erased with a single email, A.S. Melissa escorted him back to the lobby. Amir spotted Reed through the glass walls of a conference room, gesturing animatedly to a group of executives. Not off-site after all, just avoiding confrontation. Their eyes met briefly. Reed's expression didn't change, no remorse, no acknowledgement, just a calculated blankness before he turned back to his presentation. Outside, Amir set the box in his car trunk. Rain began to fall again, soaking through his shirt. He didn't rush to get out of it. The cold drops against his skin were the only thing that felt real. That night, he sat in his darkened apartment, scrolling through job listings, preparing to update his resume. But each time he started typing, Reed's words echoed. We need people who prioritize work. Amir had prioritized nothing but work for years. He'd missed holidays, broken off relationships, drifted away from friends. He'd even missed his last chance to reconcile with his father because of a quarterly review meeting. And for what? To be discarded the moment he took time to bury that same father? He closed the laptop and poured himself a drink. No tears, no rage, just a cold, hardening resolve. A week passed. Amir had applied to 12 positions, received 4 callbacks, and scheduled 2 interviews. He moved through the motions mechanically, answering questions about his experience and skills without enthusiasm. Something fundamental had shifted inside him, a foundational crack in his belief that hard work and loyalty meant anything in the corporate world. His phone rang with an unknown number on Tuesday afternoon. Is this Amir Kessler? A woman's voice, strained and urgent. Speaking. This is Trina Castell, Northwest Regional Manager at Trailforge. Do you have a moment to talk? Amir's grip tightened on the phone. I'm listening. There's been a significant misunderstanding. Reed Halperin never had the authority to terminate your employment. He circumvented proper channels and falsified approval documents. The board is furious. Amir said nothing, letting the silence stretch. We'd like to offer you your position back, effective immediately, with a substantial compensation package for the misunderstanding. Your contributions to Trailforge have been invaluable, and losing you was never. When did you find out? Amir interrupted. I'm sorry. When did you discover Reed didn't have authority to fire me? A pause. 3 days ago. And you're calling me now. We had to consult with legal and... Let me be clear, Trina, Amir said, his voice unervingly calm. Reed Halperin fired me for taking approved bereavement leave after my father died. Not a single person at Trailforge, including you, stood up when it happened. Now you've spent 3 days calculating the minimum amount required to make this problem go away. That's not fair, Amir. Corporate procedures take time. I'm not coming back. Please reconsider. Your team needs you. The Singapore corridor. You're going to remember this conversation. Amir cut in, his voice dropping lower, when I make you all irrelevant. He ended the call and set his phone down carefully on the coffee table. For the first time in days, he felt something other than numb detachment. It wasn't quite anger, it was colder, more focused. Purpose. Amir opened his laptop and searched for a name he hadn't thought about in years. Vincent Lore. The bar was dimly lit, with exposed brick walls and the subtle aroma of hops hanging in the air. Amir spotted Vincent immediately slouched in a corner booth, beard fuller than in their college days, but with the same intense eyes that had made him both a formidable rival and a reluctant ally during their engineering program. Kessler. Vincent didn't stand as Amir approached. Didn't expect to hear from you. Thought you were too busy saving the world, one shipping container at a time. Amir slid into the booth. Things change. Trailforge finally realized you were too good for them. Vincent took a swig of his beer. Other way around. Amir signaled for the bartender. How's the security consulting business? Boring as hell. Rich companies paying me to tell them their systems are garbage, then ignoring half my recommendations. Vincent leaned forward. But you didn't track me down after 8 years to discuss my career frustrations. The bartender brought Amir's drink, and he waited until she was out of earshot before continuing. I want to build something new, something that will change logistics from the ground up. Vincent's eyebrow raised. And you need my help because you're the best systems architect I know, and you hate corporate bureaucracy as much as I do. A smile crept across Vincent's face. You must be desperate if you're coming to me. Last I recall, you said my coding style was an offense to computer science. It still is, but it works. Amir took a drink. I need someone who thinks differently than I do. What exactly are you proposing? Amir pulled out his tablet and slid it across the table. On it was a rough diagram, nodes and connections mapping out a decentralized logistics platform. Trailforge and companies like it rely on middlemen, bureaucracy, and information hoarding, Amir explained. I want to create a system that connects independent carriers, warehouses, and customers, directly cutting out the bloat. Vincent studied the diagram, his finger tracing the connections. An AI-driven model that adapts to real-time conditions. Exactly. No need for 20 vice presidents to approve every route change. This would decimate companies like Trailforge. That's the idea. Vincent looked up, studying Amir's face. This isn't just about disrupting an industry. This is personal. Amir didn't deny it. Does that matter if the concept is sound? Vincent pushed the tablet back toward Amir. It matters to me. I don't want to be collateral damage in your revenge fantasy. It's not fantasy. It's evolution. Amir leaned forward. Big logistics is vulnerable. They're dinosaurs with expensive infrastructure and outdated thinking. The right meteor could change everything. And you want to be that meteor. I want us to be. Vincent was quiet for a moment, then drained his beer. What would you call it? This meteor of yours. Threadline. A single thread that connects everything, cutting through the noise. Vincent seemed to weigh the name, testing it against whatever internal metric he used. Finally, he nodded. I'm in. But on one condition. I get full system architecture control. You handle business development. I build the bones. No compromise. Amir extended his hand. Deal. As they shook, something electric passed between them, the recognition of a shared purpose forged from different motives. Vincent's desire to prove his genius and Amir's cold determination to rewrite his own story, converging into something potentially revolutionary. They spent the next 3 hours sketching ideas on napkins and arguing over implementation details. By closing time, the skeleton of Threadline had begun to take shape. Not just a logistics app, but a complete ecosystem that would reward efficiency and punish waste. Walking to his car afterward, Amir felt his phone vibrate. Another call from Trailforge, this time from the CEO's office. He declined it without breaking stride. The converted warehouse space in southeast Portland smelled of fresh paint and new beginnings. Sunlight streamed through the industrial windows, illuminating dust motes that danced above the cluster of desks Amir had arranged in the center of the room. It's not exactly Google, Amir said as he led Lorna Bechtel through the space. But it's ours. Lorna surveyed the room, her critical designers' eye taking everything in. At 39, she carried herself with the confidence of someone who'd seen the industry's worst and survived it. The disgrace, that had ended her career at a major tech firm, speaking out against unethical data collection practices had only sharpened her resolve. "I don't need ping-pong tables and free kombucha," she said. "I need the freedom to design something honest." That's exactly what Threadline is about. Amir brought her to a workstation. Transparency at every level. She set down her portfolio and withdrew several sketches. "I've been thinking about your user flow problems. The issue isn't complexity, it's visibility." For the next hour, she walked him through her vision of the interface, simple enough for a truck driver to navigate on a small screen at a gas station, but powerful enough for a logistics manager to orchestrate multiple shipments across continents. "This is brilliant," Amir said when she finished. "When can you start?" "I have one question first." Her eyes met his directly. "I know about what happened at Trailforge. I have friends there. Are you building this to help independent operators or to destroy your old company?" Amir didn't hesitate. "Both." "Does that bother you?" "No." A small smile crossed her face. "I just wanted to hear you say it out loud. I'll start tomorrow." With Lorna on board, the team began to take shape. Vincent built the system architecture from his home office, emerging only for weekly meetings where he'd argue passionately about database structures and API endpoints, then disappear again into his digital cave point 2 weeks later. Amir found himself at a union rally outside a distribution center, listening to a charismatic young man address a crowd of warehouse workers. "They say automation is coming for our jobs," Dion Keys shouted into a megaphone. "But the truth is, they're coming for our dignity first. We're not against technology, we're against technology that treats humans like disposable parts." The crowd erupted in cheers. Amir waited until the rally dispersed before approaching. "That was impressive," he said, extending his hand. "Amir Kessler." Dion studied him warily. "You're not management. They don't wear jeans this nice." Amir laughed. "No, I'm not. I'm building something new, and I need someone who understands what happens on loading docks and warehouse floors. Someone workers trust." "Why me?" "Because you just got fired for organizing, and instead of backing down, you're still out here fighting. That's the kind of commitment I need." Over coffee, Amir explained Threadline's vision, how it would allow independent workers to compete with corporate giants, how it would prioritize fair wages and humane scheduling. "Sounds too good to be true," Dion said skeptically. "It will be hard," Amir admitted. "We're taking on entrenched powers. But if we succeed, we change the rules forever." Dion stirred his coffee thoughtfully. "My people will need guarantees. Real protections. Write them into the code of conduct yourself. I'll sign whatever you draft." That night, Amir updated the whiteboard in their office with a new name. Dion Keys, Community Advocate. AS weeks turned into months. Threadline evolved from concept to prototype. They worked punishing hours, fueled by a shared vision and, in Amir's case, by the cold ember of vindication that glowed whenever he remembered Reed's dismissive email. The first version of the app successfully connected 3 independent truckers with a small warehouse in Vancouver, Washington. The second version added real-time route optimization. By version 3, they had a fully functional platform ready for beta testing. "We should celebrate," Lorna suggested after they'd successfully completed their first multi-state shipment coordination. "We've earned at least one night off." Amir glanced at the progress board. "Not yet. We're still vulnerable." He didn't say what they all knew. Trailforge was watching. And waiting, the call came on a Tuesday morning. Their prospective investor, a venture capital firm that had shown significant interest, was abruptly withdrawing. "I don't understand," Amir said, pacing the conference room. "Last week they were ready to sign. What changed?" Vincent looked up from his laptop. "Someone got to them." Lorna nodded grimly. "It's not just them. 2 of our beta testers backed out this morning." No explanation. Amir's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Check your email." In his inbox was a message from Trina Castell, now using a personal account. "They know what you're building. Reed is using every connection he has to make sure you fail. Be careful. This is the only warning I can give." Amir showed the others. "How much damage can they do?" Dion asked. "A lot," Vincent muttered. "Logistics is an old boys network. One word from a company like Trailforge can lock us out of partnerships warehouse agreements, even payment processing. Over the next week, the attacks intensified. Their cloud server was flooded with junk traffic in a coordinated DDoS attack. A key agreement with a Portland warehouse fell through after the owner received a mysterious call questioning Threadline's financial stability. Even their office landlord raised concerns about renewing their lease. "It's Reed," Amir said during an emergency team meeting. "He's trying to choke us before we can breathe." "How do you know it's him specifically?" Lorna asked. "Because this is personal. He's not just protecting Trailforge, he's making sure I know he's the one doing it." As if to confirm his suspicion, Amir's phone rang that evening. Trina Castell again. "You should stop now," she said without preamble. "Reed has the board convinced you're stealing proprietary algorithms. He's preparing legal action. That's absurd. Threadline's system is entirely original. It doesn't matter what's true. It matters what they can tie up in court until you run out of money." Her voice lowered. "He has information on your investors, your partners, even your team members. He's not above using it." After the call, Amir gathered everyone in the office. He relayed Trina's warning, holding nothing back. "This is getting dangerous," he concluded. "I started this to prove a point, but I don't have the right to risk your futures. If anyone wants to walk away, now's the time. No hard feelings." Silence filled the room. Then Lorna stood up, gathering her things. "Where are you going?" Amir asked, heart sinking. "To call my cousin at TechCrunch. If Reed wants to play dirty, let's make sure everyone knows it." She paused at the door. "Unless you'd rather I stay and update the user interface for version 4? A thin smile crossed Amir's face. Both would be appreciated, but the pressure continued to mount. Vincent started drinking more heavily during their late-night coding sessions, his temper flaring over minor issues. Dion received a letter from Trailforge's lawyers threatening a lawsuit over alleged contract violations from his union organizing days. "They're picking us off one by one," Vincent growled, slamming his laptop shut after another potential partner backed out. "At this rate, we'll be bankrupt in a month." Amir stood by the window, watching rain streak the glass. "I need to think." He left without another word, driving east toward the Columbia River Gorge. His father's cabin in Estacada stood isolated among the pines, untouched since he'd cleaned it out after the funeral. He parked in the gravel driveway and sat in silence, listening to rain patter on the car roof. Inside, the cabin smelled of dust and absence. Amir moved through the rooms like a ghost, touching nothing, seeing everything. His father's fishing rod still leaned in the corner. His reading glasses still rested on a stack of books. For 2 days, Amir barely ate or slept. He sat on the porch, watching mist rise from the forest floor, letting his mind empty of everything except the fundamental problem. Reed had access to traditional power structures that Threadline didn't. The answer came on the second night, as he stared into the darkness. They didn't need traditional structures. They needed to build new ones. When Amir returned to Portland, he found the office in disarray. Vincent sat slumped at his desk, eyes bloodshot, unshaven. Lorna was frantically trying to recover data from a corrupted backup. Dion was on the phone, attempting to reassure a nervous partner. "Where the hell have you been?" Vincent demanded, his words slightly slurred. "Everything's falling apart. I had to work something out." Amir set his bag down and moved to the whiteboard. "Gather round. I have a new approach. Unless it involves a miracle, I'm not interested," Vincent muttered, but he wheeled his chair over. When everyone was seated, Amir began to sketch out his plan, a decentralized token model that would allow users to invest directly in Threadline's growth. No venture capital, no traditional investors, direct community ownership. "Is this legal?" Lorna asked, studying the diagram. "I spent yesterday with a blockchain attorney. It's complicated but legitimate." Amir circled a section of his drawing. "We bypassed the gatekeepers completely." Vincent leaned forward, suddenly alert despite his hangover. "You're talking about a public utility model for logistics. That's actually brilliant." "It's risky," Dion cautioned. "Most of these token projects fail. Most don't solve a real problem," Amir countered. "We do, and we have something else they don't, a villain." He pulled up an email on his tablet. It was a draft press release titled, "Fired for a Funeral. One man's revenge on Trailforge. You want to go public with what happened? Lorna asked. Not us. An anonymous source will leak it to Logistics Week. Amir looked around the room. Trailforge tactics only work in the dark. In the light, they're bullies picking on the underdog. Americans hate bullies. This makes it even more personal, Dion warned. Reed will come after you with everything he has. Good. Amir's voice hardened. Let him show the world exactly who he is. The team spent the next day refining the strategy. By evening, they had a clear path forward, a technical white paper for their token model, a streamlined beta version of the app focused on independent operators, and a carefully crafted narrative that positioned Threadline as the future of ethical logistics. They were wrapping up. Vincent pulled Amir aside. I need to apologize, he said quietly. I almost bailed yesterday. The pressure, it got to me. We all have breaking points, Amir replied. What matters is what you do afterward. Vincent nodded, something like respect flickering in his eyes. What about you? Do you have a breaking point? Amir thought about the question. Already broke. At my father's funeral. When Reed fired me. That's the thing about breaking, sometimes you come back stronger. The story broke the following week. Fired for a funeral became the top article on Logistics Week, then spread to larger tech publications. Social media erupted with outrage. Former Trailforge employees came forward with similar stories of toxic management and arbitrary dismissals. Reed attempted damage control, issuing a statement about personnel matters being complex and commitment to work-life balance. It only fueled the fire. Within days, Threadline's token presale was oversubscribed. Independent truckers, warehouse operators, and logistics coordinators weren't just buying in, they were evangelizing. Each new attack from Trailforge's legal team only strengthened the narrative of David versus Goliath. We've hit 10,000 users, Lorna announced, updating the tracking board. Growth is exponential. Amir nodded, scanning the latest metrics. Threadline's beta was showing remarkable adoption rates among independent logistics operators. The app's AI-driven coordination was saving them an average of 23% on fuel costs and reducing empty load returns by nearly 40%. Support requests are manageable, Dion added. Most users are figuring out the interface on their own, which speaks to Lorna's design. Vincent emerged from his coding den, looking energized for the first time in weeks. The backend is holding. We can scale to 50,000 users without significant infrastructure changes. This was the moment Amir had envisioned during those solitary days at his father's cabin. Threadline, gaining momentum not through venture funding or corporate partnerships, but through genuine utility. Every shipment coordinated through their platform was one less for traditional logistics companies. Trailforge was feeling the pressure. Their legal threats had evolved into actual lawsuits, but the claims were increasingly desperate and transparent. Meanwhile, their stock had dropped 15% as investors questioned their ability to compete with more agile competitors. Reed's making his move, Lorna said one morning, passing her tablet to Amir. On it was an announcement from Trailforge. They were launching their own mobile logistics coordination app, Trail Connect, promising revolutionary improvements to the supply chain process. They're rushing something out to counter us, Vincent observed, reading over Amir's shoulder. That's dangerous coding practice. How fast can they build something like this? Dion asked. They can't, Amir said, setting down the tablet. Not properly. They're a hardware and infrastructure company trying to do software innovation. It's not in their DNA. 3 weeks later, Trailforge launched Trail Connect with considerable fanfare, a splashy event at their headquarters, press releases in major publications, and a direct marketing campaign to their existing clients. The Threadline team gathered around Lorna's monitor, watching the live stream of the launch. Reed Halperin stood on stage, impeccably dressed as always, gesturing to a giant screen displaying the Trail Connect interface, which bore a suspicious resemblance to Threadline's design. They copied our UI, Lorna muttered. Badly. They didn't understand why it works, Amir noted. Look at the information hierarchy. They prioritize corporate branding over user functionality. The demonstration proceeded smoothly until Reed attempted to show a live shipment coordination. The app froze. He tapped the screen several times, forcing a smile as technicians hurried to help. After an awkward minute, they switched to a pre-recorded simulation. Instead, Vincent snorted. Amateur hour. Reports began trickling in by evening. Trail Connect was crashing regularly. Its route optimization was sending trucks on nonsensical detours. Worse, it was failing to properly update inventory systems, causing shipments to be lost in digital limbo. .by morning, TrailForge stock had dropped another 8%. Hashtag TrailFail was trending on social media. They'll pull it and try again, Dion predicted. No, they won't, Amir said. Reed can't admit failure. He'll double down. Amir was right. Rather than withdrawing the app, TrailForge issued an update that attempted to fix the critical bugs. It introduced new ones instead, including a catastrophic error that accidentally exposed client pricing data to competitors. This is better than I could have hoped for, Vincent said, watching the fallout unfold. They're imploding. Amir didn't join in the celebration. It's not enough, he said quietly. They'll recover. TrailForge is too established to be brought down by one failed app launch. What more do you want? Lorna asked. We're winning. Amir closed his laptop. I want what Reed took from me. Peace of mind. The knowledge that actions have consequences. You're starting to worry me, Amir, Dion said. This isn't just business anymore. It never was. 6 months after Threadline's launch, the logistics landscape had shifted dramatically. Their user base had grown to over 50,000 independent operators. Major retailers were beginning to integrate with their API, attracted by the cost savings and efficiency. TrailForge, meanwhile, was struggling to recover from the Trail Connect disaster, which had exposed deeper problems in their organization. Southeast region is officially Threadline dominant, Dion announced during their weekly metrics review. Pacific Northwest crossed the threshold last month. We're making inroads in the Midwest. Vincent pulled up a map showing Threadline shipments in real time, a web of golden threads spanning the country, denser in some regions than others, but growing everywhere. California next, Lorna suggested. Texas, Amir corrected. Less regulation, more independent operators. California will follow once we have critical mass. A notification popped up on Amir's screen, a news alert about TrailForge. He clicked it open and read aloud. TrailForge announces restructuring amid growing competition. CEO cites evolving market conditions as reason for layoffs. How many jobs? Dion asked. 800. Amir scrolled through the article. Mostly middle management. Reed's cleaning house, Vincent observed, trying to streamline before the board loses patience. Amir closed the article, his expression unreadable. The victory felt hollow somehow. 800 people losing their livelihoods hadn't been part of his vision for justice. Later that evening, as the office emptied, Amir received an unexpected visitor. The receptionist buzzed him. There's a woman here to see you. Says her name is Priya Esteban from Tech Dynamics. Priya was younger than Amir expected, early 30s, with sharp eyes and a recorder already in hand. Thanks for seeing me without an appointment, Mr. Kessler. I'm working on a feature about innovation and logistics, and Threadline is the story everyone's talking about. Happy to help. Amir gestured to a chair. Though we generally coordinate press through our media team, this isn't exactly a standard interview. She sat down, setting her recorder on the desk. I've been investigating TrailForge for the past month. Specifically, their HR practices under Reed Halperin's leadership. Amir's interest sharpened. What have you found? A pattern. She pulled out a tablet and passed it to him. 17 employees terminated after taking approved leave, medical, bereavement, family care. All high performers before their absence. All let go within days of returning. Amir scrolled through the list, recognizing several names from his time at the company. Why are you showing me this? Because you were one of them. And because I have a source inside TrailForge who claims Reed Halperin manipulated performance reviews, fabricated policy violations, and pressured HR to approve terminations that violated company policy and possibly state law. Who's your source? Priya smiled. I can't reveal that. But they provided documentation. Emails, altered performance reviews, backdated warnings, concrete evidence of systematic abuse. What do you need from me? Your story. On the record. You're not just another terminated employee. Anymore, you build a competitor that's eating Trailforge's lunch. Your perspective adds weight. Amir considered the request. Going public would make the conflict with Reed explicitly personal, potentially undermining Threadline's broader mission. But staying silent meant others might suffer the same injustice. I'll give you the interview, he decided. But the focus should be on the pattern, not my individual case. This isn't about me versus Reed. It's about abusive corporate practices that need to stop. When the article published the following week, it sent shockwaves through the industry. The Trailforge Purge, how one executive's toxic leadership created its strongest competitor, became the most shared business story of the month. Former employees emerged with additional accounts of mistreatment. Current employees began updating their resumes en masse. The Trailforge board called an emergency meeting. By evening, they had announced Reed's suspension pending internal investigation. Trina Castell resigned the same day, citing personal reasons. The stock plummeted. Class action lawsuits materialized overnight. Clients began exploring alternatives, many finding their way to Threadline. You did it, Vincent said, dropping a newspaper on Amir's desk. Trailforge is in free fall. Amir studied the headline. Trailforge crisis deepens as clients flee. We did it, he corrected, looking around at the team they'd built. All of us. But that night, alone in his apartment, Amir felt strangely disconnected from victory. He stood at his window, watching rain streak the glass, and realized that destroying what Reed had built wasn't enough. The true vindication would come in building something better, something that would last long after Trailforge was forgotten. He picked up his phone and dialed Vincent. It's late. Vincent answered groggily. I need you to help me rebuild the core routing algorithm, Amir said without preamble. I've been thinking about how to incorporate sustainability metrics into the efficiency calculations. A pause, then a chuckle. You know, most people would be celebrating right now. This is how I celebrate. The Tech Dynamics expose was just the beginning. As Threadline continued its meteoric rise, the full extent of Trailforge's internal dysfunction became public knowledge. Priya Esteban's follow-up investigations revealed a culture of fear and retaliation that extended far beyond Reed Halperin's direct influence. Amir watched it unfold with grim satisfaction, but his focus remained on Threadline's expansion. They had moved to larger offices downtown, hired 30 additional developers, and were preparing to launch in international markets. Toronto and Vancouver rollouts are ahead of schedule, Lorna reported during their leadership meeting. European regulatory compliance is proceeding slower than expected, but we should be operational in London and Amsterdam by quarter's end. Amir nodded, making notes on his tablet. What about the sustainability metrics? Integration is at 90%, Vincent replied. Early data shows users are actually selecting greener routes when the cost difference is minimal. It's working better than projected. Their conversation was interrupted by Dion, who burst into the conference room, looking uncharacteristically agitated. You all need to see this. He activated the wall screen, bringing up a live news broadcast. A young woman in a Trailforge HR uniform stood outside the company headquarters, surrounded by reporters. Could no longer remain silent, she was saying. The documents I'm releasing today prove that Reed Halperin and several senior executives deliberately targeted employees who used their legally protected leave. They created a scoring system to identify flight risks based on family status, health conditions, and personal emergencies. Who is she? Lorna asked. Jamie Winters, Amir said quietly. She processed my termination paperwork. The whistleblower continued. I've provided federal investigators with evidence that Mr. Halperin falsified board approvals for at least 23 terminations and manipulated performance data to create pretexts for dismissal. The broadcast cut to a panel of legal experts discussing the potential ramifications. Words like criminal liability and pattern of discrimination flashed across the cheering. This is beyond what we knew, Dion said, turning to Amir. Did you have any idea it was this systematic? Amir shook his head slowly. I knew Reed was vindictive, but this... He gestured at the screen. This is pathological. The story dominated business news for days. Trailforge board placed 3 additional executives on leave and hired an external firm to conduct a comprehensive audit. Their stock price, already weakened, went into free fall. Priya Esteban contacted Amir for comment, but he declined, saying only that the focus should remain on the affected employees and accountability for those responsible. Privately, though, he felt a complex mix of emotions. Vindication, certainly, but also a hollowness, the realization that what had happened to him wasn't personal after all. He'd been just another number in Reed's calculated purge, another efficiency to be gained by discarding perceived liabilities. That evening, Amir received an unexpected email from Jamie Winters. "Mr. Kessler, you don't know me, but I handled your HR paperwork when Mr. Halpern terminated your employment. I want you to know that I objected to your dismissal at the time, but was overruled and threatened with termination myself if I escalated my concerns. What you've built with Threadline inspired me to finally speak up. You show that there's a better way to do business, one that values people as more than disposable assets. Thank you for that example." Jamie Winters Amir read the email twice, then closed his laptop without replying. What could he say? That his motivation had been revenge, not righteousness? That Threadline's ethical stance had evolved from his desire to destroy rather than create. The truth was more complicated than either narrative allowed. Threadline had begun as an instrument of vengeance, but had grown into something authentic, a platform that genuinely improved the working lives of thousands. Perhaps that was justice enough that Trailforge's unraveling accelerated with each passing week. The board fired Reed and the CFO after the external audit confirmed the whistleblower's allegations. Trina's resignation was followed by an exodus of mid-level managers eager to distance themselves from a scandal. Clients began terminating contracts, unwilling to associate with a company now synonymous with toxic leadership. Amir tracked developments with methodical detachment, monitoring Trailforge's stock price and market share as they plummeted. Their quarterly earnings call was a disaster, massive revenue drops, ballooning legal costs, and no clear recovery strategy. They've laid off another 300 employees, Vincent reported one morning. Development team this time. They're going into survival mode. Will they file for bankruptcy? Lorna asked. Not yet, Amir said. They still have valuable physical assets, warehouses, distribution centers, delivery fleets. Someone will buy them for parts, if nothing else. Dion looked troubled. Those are real people losing their jobs, Amir. People who had nothing to do with Reed's decisions. I know. Amir's voice softened slightly. That's why we're implementing the transition program. He pulled up a presentation outlining Threadline's new initiative, specialized training and placement services for former Trailforge employees, particularly those with warehouse and logistics experience. We need their expertise, he explained, and they need jobs. It's practical, not charitable. But there was more to it than that. Amir had begun to recognize that Trailforge's implosion, satisfying as it was, had created collateral damage he hadn't anticipated. The transition program was his first acknowledgement of that responsibility. As they were discussing implementation details, Amir's assistant interrupted with an urgent message. He'd been invited to speak at Logistics Con, the industry's premier annual conference. The original keynote speaker had been Reed Halperin. Poetic justice, Vincent observed. You should accept. Amir studied the invitation. They want me to talk about disruption and the future of logistics. This isn't about ideas, it's about spectacle. They want the man who took down Trailforge. So, Lorna challenged. Use the platform to talk about what actually matters: decentralized systems, worker empowerment, sustainability. Turn their spectacle into substance. Amir considered it, then shook his head. Decline. Suggest they invite Jamie Winters instead. Her story is more important than mine. The conference organizers were disappointed, but eventually agreed. Jamie's keynote, Ethics as Infrastructure, Building Sustainable Systems, became the most discussed session of the event. Amir watched the live stream from his office, noting how confidently she addressed the industry veterans. Her message was clear. The future belonged to companies that valued human capital as much as financial capital. The standing ovation she received suggested the message was resonating. That afternoon, As Amir was reviewing expansion plans, his assistant appeared at his door again. "Sir, there's someone here to see you. I don't have any appointments." "It's Reed Halperin. He doesn't have an appointment. He just showed up." Amir felt a cold stillness settle over him. "Send him in." Reed Halperin had changed. His tailored suit hung slightly loose on his frame. The imperious confidence that had once radiated from him had dimmed to a desperate intensity. But his eyes still held the calculating edge Amir remembered. "Amir." Reed remained standing just inside the doorway. "Thank you for seeing me. What do you want?" Amir didn't rise from his desk or offer Reed's seat. Reed glanced around the office at the views of downtown Portland, the sleek furnishings, the wall display showing Threadline's global operations in real time. "Nice setup. You've done well for yourself. Again, what do you want?" Reed stepped further into the room. "I want to talk. Man to man. No lawyers. No press. No posturing. About ending this." Reed gestured vaguely. "You've made your point. You've won. Trail Forge is finished. I'm finished. Isn't that enough?" Amir studied him, noting the slight tremor in his hands, the shadows under his eyes. "I didn't destroy Trail Forge, Reed. You did. I just built something better. Come on, Amir." A hint of the old condescension crept into Reed's voice. "We both know this was about revenge. I made a mistake with your termination. I admit that. But this systematic dismantling of a company I spent 15 years building, that's disproportionate." "Disproportionate?" Amir's voice remained calm, but something dangerous flickered in his eyes. "You fired me for taking bereavement leave after my father died. You didn't even have the courage to do it to my face. Then you tried to blackball me in the industry. Business is tough. People get fired every day. This wasn't business. This was cruelty masked as business necessity. And you didn't just do it to me. You did it to dozens of others." Reed sank into a chair uninvited. "Look, I made mistakes. I crossed lines I shouldn't have crossed. But I'm paying for it now. My career is over. My reputation is destroyed. My wife left. Isn't that punishment enough?" For a moment, Amir considered what it would feel like to forgive, to tell Reed he understood, to offer some gesture of reconciliation. The impulse died as quickly as it arose. Some bridges, once burned, should remain ashes. "You cost me my peace during the worst days of my life," Amir said, each word precise and cold. "You try to erase me. Now watch me write the future." Reed's expression hardened. "So that's it? No chance for redemption?" "Redemption isn't something I give you, Reed. It's something you earn through actions, not apologies when you've run out of options." Amir stood. "This meeting is over. You'll regret this inflexibility someday," Reed said, rising. "When someone asks you for a second chance, and you remember this moment." "I doubt it." Amir moved to the door and held it open. "Goodbye, Reed." After Reed left, Amir stood at his window, watching the former executive cross the street below, shoulders hunched against a light rain. He felt no satisfaction in the man's downfall, but no regret either. Some debts couldn't be repaid with apologies. His phone buzzed Vincent requesting an urgent meeting. Amir composed himself and headed to the conference room, where he found Vincent looking uncommonly excited. "I need to show you something," Vincent said without preamble. "Something big." Vincent closed the conference room door and activated privacy mode, dimming the glass walls. "Before I left Trail Forge," he began, "I made a copy of something I shouldn't have had access to." Amir frowned. "What are you talking about?" Vincent produced a small drive. "During a security audit, I discovered an isolated data silo completely unconnected to the main network, accessible only through a specific internal server." He plugged the drive into the table's interface. "It was odd enough that I dug deeper. What I found," he shook his head. "I made a copy, but never knew what to do with it. Until now, data filled the wall screen, spreadsheets, email archives, contract documents." "What am I looking at?" Amir asked. "Evidence of price fixing. Collusion between Trail Forge and 3 other major logistics companies to maintain artificially high rates in key corridors. Deliberate capacity manipulation to create false shortages." Vincent scrolled through the files. "There's more kickbacks from vendors, deliberate misclassification of workers to avoid benefits, falsified safety reports. Amir studied the documents, recognizing several executives' names, including Reed's. Why show me this now? Because Reed just visited you. Because Trailforge is already mortally wounded. Vincent leaned forward. This would be the kill shot. Not just bankruptcy, criminal charges. The implications were clear. With this evidence, they could ensure that Trailforge didn't just fall, it was obliterated, its executives potentially facing prison time. Amir sat back, considering. Who else knows about this? Just us. I never told anyone. Not even Lorna or Dion. Vincent shook his head. This is different from exposing toxic management. This is potential prison time for dozens of people. I wanted your call on what to do. Amir stood and paced the length of the conference room. The data on screen represented the ultimate victory, not just professional vindication, but legal retribution. Reed had broken the law, not just ethical boundaries, yet something gave him pause. The personal vendetta had already evolved into something larger than himself. Threadline was changing the industry in ways that went beyond revenge. This final blow would satisfy a thirst for justice, but at what cost to those who had no part in Reed's crimes? We need to share this with regulators, Amir decided finally. But anonymously, no fingerprints, no connection to Threadline. This isn't about us versus them anymore. It's about cleaning up an industry. Vincent studied him. You've changed. Have I? The Amir who started Threadline would have wanted Reed's head on a pike. Amir considered this. Maybe, or maybe I just understand better what actually matters. They spent the next day preparing the data, stripping it of any metadata that could be traced back to them. They arranged for its anonymous delivery to the Federal Trade Commission and the Department of Justice, along with a detailed roadmap to help investigators navigate the complex evidence. Within weeks, federal agents raided Trailforge headquarters and 3 other logistics companies implicated in the price-fixing scheme. Indictments followed. Trailforge's remaining contracts were suspended pending investigation, and their government business, nearly 30% of their remaining revenue, evaporated overnight. Amir watched the news coverage dispassionately. The company he'd once given everything to was effectively finished. Reed and several other executives faced years of litigation and possible incarceration. Justice had been served, albeit in a form he hadn't initially envisioned. In the end, it wasn't personal vengeance that had destroyed Trailforge, but the consequences of its own corrupt foundation. There was a certain symmetry to that which satisfied Amir more deeply than any direct retribution could have. 1 year after Threadline's launch, Amir stood in the lobby of what had once been Trailforge's Portland headquarters. The building had been sold in bankruptcy proceedings, and Threadline, now valued at over $1 billion, had acquired it for their expanding operations. Workers were removing the last traces of the Trailforge logo from the facade, replacing it with a simple golden thread woven through a stylized labyrinth. The symbolism wasn't subtle, but Amir found it fitting nonetheless. Quite a moment, Lorna said, joining him. From fired employee to owner of the building in 18 months. That might be a record. The building is just a building, Amir replied. It's what happens inside that matters. And much was happening. Threadline had grown to over 400 employees, many of them former Trailforge workers. Their platform now coordinated logistics across North America and was expanding into Europe and Asia. More importantly, they had established new standard for the industry: transparent pricing, fair labor practices, and environmental sustainability metrics built directly into their routing algorithms. The mural team is ready when you are, Dion called from across the lobby. Amir nodded and followed him outside, where artists were preparing to transform the blank exterior wall into Threadline's first public art installation. The design was a community collaboration, a golden thread weaving through representations of city streets, rural highways, ports, and warehouses, connecting them all in a harmonious flow. Why a mural? A local reporter asked Amir as the artists began their work. Most tech companies would just put up a logo. Because logistics isn't about abstract technology, Amir explained. It's about physical places and real people. Everything we build should reflect that reality. In the months that followed, Threadline continued its meteoric rise. Industry publications that had once praised Trailford's innovation now held Amir's company as the new standard. Competitors rushed to adopt similar models, particularly the sustainability metrics that had proven surprisingly popular with both carriers and customers. Vincent, whose initial motivation had been largely financial, found himself increasingly invested in Threadline's vision. "We're actually changing things," he observed during one late-night coding session. "Not just making money, but restructuring how an entire industry operates." "That was always the plan," Amir replied, though they both knew it hadn't been, not at first. What had begun as an instrument of revenge had evolved into something neither of them had fully envisioned. As Threadline's influence grew, so did the demands on Amir's time. He was invited to speak at industry conferences, consult on municipal transportation planning, even testify before Congress on supply chain resilience. He declined most invitations, preferring to remain focused on building rather than talking. When reporters asked about Trailford's collapse, he offered no comments on Reed's legal troubles or the company's bankruptcy. The victory, such as it was, required no commentary. The results spoke for themselves that on a rainy Thursday morning, exactly 2 years after his father's funeral, Amir returned to the cemetery alone. He parked in the same spot, walked the same path, and stood before the simple headstone bearing his father's name. Nathan Kessler, 1958-2023, but the small stone he had placed on the grave during his last visit was still there, weathered but present. Amir didn't bring flowers or memorabilia. He came empty-handed, as he had before, but something was different. The hollow feeling that had dominated him 2 years ago had been replaced by something more complex, not peace, exactly, but a certain steadiness. The rage that had fueled his initial quest for vindication had burned away, leaving behind a clearer purpose. He stood in silence, raindrops pattering on his umbrella, considering the strange path that had led from this grave to his current life. His father's death had triggered a sequence of events that transformed not only his own trajectory, but an entire industry. There was no way to know if Nathan would have approved or understood. After a time, he didn't track how long Amir placed his hand briefly on the headstone. Still no words came. Perhaps none were needed. The silence they had maintained in life continued in death, but it no longer felt like a failure. It was simply what had been to A.S. He turned to Leav. His phone buzzed with a message from Lorna. The Tokyo expansion had cleared its final regulatory hurdle. Threadline was now truly global. Amir pocketed the phone without responding. The company would continue its growth with or without his immediate input. He had built something that could sustain itself, something based on efficiency and fairness rather than exploitation and hierarchy. Driving away from the cemetery, Amir caught his reflection in the rearview mirror. The man looking back at him wasn't the same one who had buried his father 2 years ago. That man had been broken by betrayal, consumed by a cold need for retribution. This man had moved beyond revenge to creation. A.S. rain streaked his windshield. Amir considered what came next. Not expansion for expansion's sake, not profit for profit's sake, but meaningful evolution. Threadline had changed logistics. Perhaps now it could change transportation more broadly, or labor practices, or sustainability metrics. The possibilities spread before him like threads, each leading to a different future. For the first time in years, Amir felt something like anticipation. Not the driven, anxious energy that had propelled him through Trailford's ranks, nor the cold determination that had fueled Threadline's creation, but something cleaner. Purposeful, he did not forgive Reed, or Trailforge, or even himself for the years of misplaced priorities. Some bridges remained ashes, but he had built new passages forward, different routes to different destinations. A stoplight. Amir watched pedestrians hurrying through the rain, each carrying their own invisible burdens and purposes. Threadline's golden thread logo caught his eye on the side of a delivery van, one of thousands now bearing that symbol across the world. The light turned green. Amir drove on, leaving the cemetery and its silences behind. Ahead lay work to be done, systems to be built, futures to be written. His choice. His terms. His silence when he wanted it.